Jesus left that place and came to his hometown, and his disciples followed him. On the Sabbath, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished. They said, "Where did this man get all this? What is this wisdom that has been given to him? What deeds of power are being done by his hands? Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and brother of James, and Joseph, and Judas, and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Then Jesus said to them, "Prophets are not without honor, except in their hometown, and among their own kin, and in their own house." And he could do no deed of power there, except that he laid hands on a few sick people and cured them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. We'll stop there for a moment. It's the first of three episodes that precede the main passage where we're going to get our foothold, which is the feeding of the 5,000. So let's look at these as they set the scene. You'll remember that in the first week we saw that there would be this ongoing puzzle about who Jesus is. The gospel starts, Jesus Christ, the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And so we did a quick flyover and saw that the identity of Jesus, is going to be a sort of puzzle, right? We'll get back to that next week, but we started by setting the table that way. The second week, we watched the rise in Jesus's popularity and sussed out a puzzle in the narrative, which is Jesus does a miracle on the Sabbath in chapter 1, and he's unopposed by any Jewish authorities in the synagogue. A couple chapters later, he does a miracle on the Sabbath in the synagogue, and they come after him and start to plot his demise, right? So we sleuthed out that these Pharisees and the opponents, the Jewish opponents who are arraying themselves against Jesus, seem to have not had the motive in Mark's portrayal of legal purity. They weren't enforcing the Sabbath with purity. They had other motives. His crowds had grown. They were worried about defending their turf, right? We went to chapter 15 and had that confirmed when Pilate said these people have handed this guy over because of jealousy, right? Last week, we took on chapters 4 and 5. And so we heard stories, parables, and then we heard miraculous healings back to back. And we focused on the fact that Jesus is both words and deeds, that there are fewer words in Mark than in any of the other Gospels, that he speaks through the things he does, right? We even entertain the thought that when Jesus speaks his parables, he does that in order to be mysterious so that they won't understand, is the line that he quotes from Isaiah. And we wondered if maybe there is some suspicion of words, right? If maybe deeds are forefronted because deeds are to be trusted more, right? This week, as we come to chapter 6, it's worth seeing that we have had a little conflict already, right? We saw in chapter 2 that the Jewish leaders didn't like it. The scribes didn't like it, that Jesus was trying to forgive a guy's sins. They said only God can forgive sins. And then we saw just after that he was eating with the tax collectors and sinners, and his disciples were hanging out with tax collectors and sinners, and the Jewish leaders criticized him for that. And then late in chapter 2, we saw that the disciples are out in a field picking grain, and it's almost like the Pharisees jump out of the grain and say, "We caught you," right? Because they're doing this on the Sabbath, and Jesus answers for them, and then he goes into a synagogue and heals a guy on the Sabbath, and they get all up in arms. We've seen controversy, even to the point of people suggesting that Jesus's power, his opponents suggesting that Jesus's power comes from demons. So these disciples have been around as Jesus has faced opposition, but the opposition has until now only come from these authorities. Who's the opponent in chapter 6? Who rejects him in chapter 6 in the scene that I just read in the synagogue at Nazareth? It's not the authorities. The people start asking, isn't this Mary's son? we know his brothers, for goodness sake. And they don't believe in him. And it says he could do no works of power there because their faith didn't engage, right? That's the first time we've seen that happen. Up till now, opposition has been from leaders, authorities who have played the part, if it were a melodrama, of the black hat or of the people you would boo and hiss, right? Well, it turns out that right after this, in the next scene, Jesus sends his disciples out to be missionaries, and they're supposed to go do what he does. And lo and behold, they do. But one of the things that happens is Jesus preps them for the fact that there will be people who don't accept them when they go out. Jesus assumes that people who receive these disciples will show them good hospitality, but he warns them some people are not going to. Shake the dust off your feet and get on. Another form of conflict that doesn't have anything to do with the leaders. And then, just after that, we get a long narration of the death of John the Baptist. So 1, 2, 3, chapter 6 begins with opposition that they haven't seen before, right? The stage seems to be being set for a deepening of the danger around following Jesus, right? 1, 2, 3 scenes in a row before this seemingly innocuous feeding of 5,000 people set up a little bit of a minor key in the background music, right? Set up, you know how you expect the villain to enter the scene when the music changes in a film. This seems to be a change in the music. And so the stage is set for us to wonder why.